Welcome back to What a Country. Are you thinking about taking a trip to Asia from the United States or Canada? Well, here's a few things to look out for because it's going to be a very different experience than if you're used to traveling for say, Europe. First, you're going to have very unfamiliar airlines: Cathay Pacific, Ava, Vietjet, Scoot, all kinds of names that if you're like me, you haven't heard of before. And when you go and look at reviews for some of these airlines, they're terrible. Many of the regional airlines in Asia have very, very bad reviews. But also, some of the highest rated airlines in the world are in Asia, and it will surprise you. Airlines like China Airlines, for instance, is actually headquartered in Taiwan, has a very good reputation. So you're going to have to do some homework when you look at the airlines. Look up which are some of the better rated ones. Try to avoid the regional ones. One of the problems with the regional ones is they'll nickel and dime you. They'll charge you even for water. They'll charge you for everything. Also, they have very, very stringent luggage requirements, especially personal item and carry-on. And so what may have worked when you've flown on a, say, typical US carrier, full service carrier over to Europe, might not work in Asia. So you're going to want to check that. Now, one of the solutions is to try to fly on an American carrier or a carrier that you're familiar with and get yourself over there. And then when you fly around the region and you're on some of these different airlines, make sure that you're looking for full service airlines like Vietnam Airlines, Philippine Airlines, China Airlines, Singapore Airlines, highly rated. Those are examples. But I go to TripAdvisor and I look for actual reviews from people who have recently flown on these flights. And some of these airlines you just want to avoid. So you're going to have to do a little extra research. And I think the biggest problem is the luggage issues. But one of the things you'll notice on these regional carriers is they're really, really cheap. They're substantially cheaper than the full service carriers. So if you're traveling light, if you're backpacking, you might be able to pull it off. So that's your first problem. Pay attention to the carriers and do some research on what airlines that you might choose to get over there. Now, these are very long flights, obviously. I like to fly out of LA. There's also good flights out of San Francisco and sometimes Seattle. But you're going to have very, very long flights. And one of the ways to handle that is to break it up. So try going to Honolulu for a layover. Try going to Japan for a layover. Sydney, Manila. These are places that are a little bit closer than mainland Asia. And it might work for you. You might be in a situation where, and I've noticed this on many flights because we're getting ready to fly to Southeast Asia. I've noticed on many flights there's extremely long layovers. Might be 8, 10, 12 hours. Well, you might be able to use that to your advantage depending on what time you arrive. And let's say you have a layover in Japan. You arrive at 7 o'clock in the morning and you don't go back out until 4 o'clock that afternoon. Leave the airport. See if you can stow your luggage, or if you're not carrying a lot, take it with you. Jump in a cab. Make sure you've complied with any visa requirements. Jump in a cab and go see Tokyo for the day, or wherever you've landed. Manila, go see Sydney for the day, and then make it back to the airport in time to clear customs and get your next flight. So you can play with that a little bit. Another way to make these long flights better is to leave your home country late at night. That way you're guaranteed to get a first night's sleep. So for instance, if we're headed to Bangkok, we're leaving from LA, our flight is just a little bit before midnight. So we know we're going to be tired enough to sleep on the bulk of the trip from LA to Tokyo. So that's one way of handling the jet lag. Another way, especially if you can't afford these unbelievable prices for business class and first class. I mean, I've seen first class for $12,000 and $15,000. This is just unbelievable, really. That's not in our budget. And so if you're going to be flying, say, economy, there's a way to get kind of a poor man's upgrade, and that is to get economy and then go in and choose better seats. They'll cost you some money, but it won't be anything like what it costs even going to premium economy. So you can get economy seats and then get a little more legroom, a little better boarding. You'll get free booze and drinks, and you can upgrade your tickets. And sometimes they're as little as $70 and $80 each. So not a big expense, but could make your flight a whole bunch better. Here's another tip that I found researching this is that one-way tickets are often cheaper than round trip, right? You would assume the one-way is going to be somewhere around 50% of a round trip, and actually it's usually 60, 65, 70% of what a round trip each leg would be. For instance, if you're going to Europe, I have found round trips don't work very well at all. In Asia, I have found, one-ways don't work well at all. In Asia, I have found that one-ways work great. I have a one-way from LA to Bangkok for $500. And you can't get anything round trip. Typically, this is on a major carrier, and this is on American. And American won't do a round trip anywhere near that, even doubling the price. So search, and I like Google Flights. I think that's the best place to start, the best place to figure out the best trip, best time, best price, that sort of thing. And it has a lot of features, so you can look at lots of different landing sites, lots of different times, etc. There are some good videos out there on YouTube on how to use Google Flights. Maybe one of these days I'll do one. But there's some very good ones out there already. And so simply figure out some of these different tools, different ways of using Google Flights, but it's really great. And then Google Flights is not a booking site. It will take you to where you can then go and book that very well-priced flight that you found. And you're always better off booking your final flight with the actual airline, not going through a travel site. If you get into any kind of trouble on a flight, any kind of a difficulty, need a refund, etc., you can't go directly to the airline. You have to deal with the travel site itself. And so quite often you might buy a non-refundable ticket. But if you bought it directly from the airline and you call them up and you have a very good reason and can have some medical documentation, for instance, they will give you a trip credit. They will work with you. But if you go through the travel site, a non-refundable ticket is non-refundable. It's over. No discussion. Now, when you're playing around with these different ways of doing things, be mindful of visas, right? Make sure that you have the visa before you land. There's many good destinations for Americans in Southeast Asia. Thailand just changed to 60 days without a visa. Vietnam is 90 days, but it needs a visa, but it's online, very easy to get, and very inexpensive. But just be mindful if you're thinking about playing around with a long layover and seeing the place that you're in, you're going to need to be able to disembark and go out of the airline, out of the airport. So make sure you have a visa. But anyway, those are some of the tips. Some of the best layovers that I've seen, as I mentioned, would be, say, through Honolulu, Japan, Sydney, Manila. And that's because they're kind of on the fringes. They're not all the way on to the mainland. You can also find great direct flights to Hong Kong, Singapore, even directly into Bangkok, etc. But those are very long flights and much, much longer than going through Honolulu, Japan, Sydney, or Manila. So if that jet lag thing is an issue for you, or just being cooped up on a plane is a problem, look at those outer edge destinations. You may even want to spend a few days there. It's a great way to let go of some jet lag, that sort of thing, kind of ease into things, is to land in Honolulu and spend a few days there, shake off some of the jet lag, and then head on to wherever you're headed, Bangkok, Da Nang, whatever. All right, well, as always, remember, subscribe and like. We're going to be headed to Southeast Asia soon. We're going to start posting a whole lot more now that we're back on the road, so come join us.